Hey guys, Mr. Offer here. I got you a different view of my office. My office is actually kind of small. We're just kind of pivoting at different points. We're on session 9. Now, I want to point out a couple of things. Session 9 will deal with the Cold War. Out of this session, there'll be 10 parts, guys, and I want to explain to you what each part's going to be and who it's going to deal with. This is an introduction into the Cold War of Section 9. Okay, Part 1. Part 2 will deal with Harry Truman. Part 3 will deal with Dwight D. Eisenhower. 4 will deal with JFK. 5, Lyndon Baines Johnson. 6 will deal with Richard Nixon. 7 will deal with Gerald Ford. 8, Jimmy Carter. 9, Ronald Reagan. And 10 will be a wrap-up. Remember, there are quizzes associated with each one of these, so kind of remember that. Guys, remember, you're writing an essay on the greatest president of the 20th century. We're going to talk about some pretty darn good ones in this session. I get a lot of Truman papers. I get a lot of Eisenhower papers. I get a lot of JFK papers. Okay, not a bunch. Every once in a while, somebody will throw a Lyndon Baines Johnson. They even had a Richard Nixon. I haven't had that many Jimmy Carters, but I get a bunch of Ronald Reagans. So that's what this is. It's an introduction to Section 9. Now, guys, this is the Cold War. I want to give just a brief overview of what is happening in American history. We have finished up with the Second War. Because of the type of war it was, the Soviets, or the Russians, whichever way you want to explain it. I've got a bad habit of still calling them the Soviet Union. They're really not anymore. But the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin had fought very dearly and died occupying chunks of Europe. The Russians had a different policy. They believed that when you conquered a land and or a people, you kept that. The United States did not believe in that, guys. Remember World War I. We will go over there, we fight. After that war, we're ready to go home and we're finished with it. In World War II, under what is called the Marshall Plan, it was named after George Marshall. He was a very famous general. George Marshall will be the Secretary of State, and he will come up with what is called the Truman Plan. He's Secretary of State under Harry Truman. It's called the Marshall Plan, excuse me. And under the Marshall Plan, we will funnel money into Europe for reconstruction and rebuilding. Now, guys, you got to remember, the Russians have moved in. They've come from that west, out of Russia and Belarus and out of Poland. And as they move forward, all the countries in the territory, they have taken it. Okay, it has now become communist, Russian controlled. They get all the way to Germany. Germany is divided. You will have East Germany and West Germany. East Germany will be controlled by the Soviet Union and the communists. West Germany will be controlled by the United States and Britain. So Germany has been divided, East and West Germany. From that, you will have the famous Berlin airdrop. Berlin is 110 miles into communist-occupied Germany. So it's in East Germany. It's 110 miles into East Germany, but it's actually free. And at one point, under Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union, they decided to choke off everything they could in Berlin. They were going to try to make the city cave in and basically turn it into a Soviet-controlled, or it would be Russian-controlled communist. What we will do is, under the Harry Truman administration, we will have the Berlin airdrop. Guys, we will fly these bombers 110 miles. It's over a very short, if you really look at the distance, they had to fly, the pilots had to stay within a certain, almost like a corridor, to fly these planes. If they flew one way or another, the Soviets could shoot them down. So we will fly bombers in out of West Germany. We will fly them in to Berlin, 110 miles into East Germany. We will deliver food supplies. We will deliver what the Berliners will need to survive. It's called the Berlin airdrop. One of the cool stories that comes out of this is the story of the Candy Bomber. He was a U.S. serviceman, and as they flew these big bombers over into Germany, he would take a handful of candy and he would throw the candy out the side of the bomber, and the little kids would catch the candy. He was called the Berlin Candy Bomber. And after that started, then the U.S. actually started doing more of that. We will deal with the Korean conflict, guys. Remember, Korea will start 2 years after the Second War. Remember, we talked about Korea. You have North Korea and you have South Korea, which we deal with today. That is started from the Second War. Remember, we talked about as the Soviet Union occupied China, they came down into North Korea and they occupied North Korea. The U.S. and its allies, we will occupy South Korea. They come up with a temporary line for prisoner exchange, which now we know is the line between North and South Korea. That will be the Korean conflict and our Korean War will fall under Harry Truman. When we talk about Truman, we'll talk about the Korean conflict. We also will talk about what's going on in Germany. Remember, guys, Truman's policy for the Soviet Union was the policy of containment. But that's going to get into Harry Truman. That's part 2 of this. This will conclude this section. It was an introduction. I wanted to kind of let you know what's going on. And when we meet again, we're going to talk about old Harry S. Truman. See you then, guys.